magically fix at the end.
I hope so. But I think we're
say.
live now. And hey, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Typical Skeptic Podcast. I have an amazing show for you guys today. I have an all-star lineup. I have with me Dr. Courtney Brown. I have with me Tony Rodrigues. And I have with me Nathan Ciszek from the Voices of Orion Project. It was Nate's idea to kind of put this panel together. And then Nate suffered a loss in his family. So I'm just glad that he was able to even make it. So if you guys see Nate, in the chat or something, give him your condolences. He lost his dog. So but anyway, I'm glad to have him here. And I also have with me the great Dr. Courtney Brown of the Farside Institute Remote Viewing. And I have with me Tony Rodrigues, 20-year and back tour experiencer, author of the book series Colony Kalil, and the follow-up to it, Project Starmaker. And with all that said, I'd like to give everybody a big warm welcome to the show. Hey, guys, thank you all for coming on. How are you?
Good.
We're doing great.
Very
Thanks
good.
For coming.
Can't complain.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I guess I could start off with this. So, Dr. Brown, what inspired you guys to make the documentary about Tony's case?
Well, Aziz, my son, follows the super soldier stuff from the beginning, and he's a big fan in that type of thing. And he had been talking about Tony for a long time. And I listen to everything he says because it's the most interesting conversations I have in the day. And I had trouble with Tony Rodrigues' story getting it because I just don't have any time to do what we're doing right now, which is to watch videos, long videos. I just couldn't watch it. But Aziz was telling me all this amazing stuff, and I thought it was so great. And then Tony came out with the book. The big book, the beginning book, Tony, what is it? It's of a Cavalier, Soldiers of Cavalier. What is the title again?
Series Colony Cavalier.
Yeah. But I meditate a couple hours a day, and I'm sitting there on my couch both before and after meditation, and I have books. And so when he came out with the book, I said, "This is me." So unlike Aziz, he's a younger generation. He likes the video as a medium. Me, I like books because I can go through it slowly, like 4 or 5 pages at a time, 10 pages at a time, and then go through it. So I went through the book, and it was riveting, number one. And number two, it matched with so much of the stuff that we're getting in terms of what the nature of the experience is out there in the space community, in the extraterrestrial community. I said, he couldn't have faked this. And it didn't seem like he was getting a lot of information from us, from Farsight stuff. I said, so I went through it, and it was the book that really got me. And I still haven't had a chance to go through a zillion of Tony's interviews because I just don't have the time to do that. But I got a second book also, the Starmaker book. What is it? And I've finished reading that. Tony, what's the name of that book again?
Project Starmaker.
Yeah, Project Starmaker. I have them upstairs on my meditation couch. And I went through that book, and that was fascinating as well. And for me, those are the ways I can easily get the information. Also, and then I found out in one of Tony's interviews, I think I actually listened to this one, Tony, where you were talking about, you discovered it was I think you wrote about it in a book. In your second book whatever. I think it was the second book. You found out it was frustrating because so many of your interviews, which you were telling so much concentrated information about what happened to you, and they went away. They just weren't there. Like 6 months later, they were gone.
Yeah.
And so the good thing about the book is it's still there. You can just get it, and it's there, and it's still on my couch, and I still grab it. And my son I want you to tell me, I want you to know that my son is getting me to be more modern. So I'm starting to use Kindle. I'm starting to use Kindle now. So I'm becoming a digital book reader. So I'm not gonna have all these piles of books on you should see my couch. It's hilarious. I just got these piles of books on them. But when I read that in Tony's book that he was getting so frustrated that his interviews were going away, and so he realized there was a great thing to the books. They don't go away. And so that was a great thing for me too, because had I been following his interviews, or if I eventually got to his interviews, and then I, Aziz eventually tells me to get to this interview or that interview, and if I got to it and it's gone, what would I have done? So it was the books that got it. And then once I read the books, this is the thing. There's a lot of details about the extraterrestrial experience, especially when you're dealing with the authoritarian, what we call the bad ETs, that you just can't fake. There's a lot of details about what they do and what the situation is like, what the conditions are like, and where they are and how they travel. And you just can't put it. You can get one or two details okay easily. You can sort of read through literature or listen to interviews and put a couple, but he was getting them all there. They were like all lined up. And I said, this has got to be something. I got to invest. I was just too curious. I said, we have to find out. So I turned into Sherlock Holmes. So I turned into, Sherlock Holmes, and I said, we're going to figure this out. So I picked two things that I thought were very unique in their characteristics. The thing on Mars, and we had sent our remote viewers to Mars a bunch of times, always under totally blind conditions. So nobody ever knows what the project is. And we put it and we mix it up with a whole bunch of other projects that are normal terrestrial, Earth-based projects. So they don't know what they're getting. And we targeted two things. It was an interaction that he had on Mars with an insectoid, actually a group of insectoids. And so there was a bunch of things. He had this sort of crazy-ass uniform on to be able to survive on the surface of Mars. And then he had an insectoid above him, a bunch of smaller insectoids, and then a big one that had claws that were reaching into his head. And I said, okay, he can't fake that. So I said, we're going to target that. And then he also had the stuff where he was in the spaceship when he was a slave soldier in Ceres. And so he was in, and so we wanted to see, what that was like, what Ceres was like, because we had done some stuff on the surface of Ceres, but we had not gone into the inside Ceres before. So I said, okay, we're going to figure out that. So I sent these remote viewers, and these people, you have to understand, these people are really trained. Now, it's not just that they're trained to be able to record their information. They're trained to get details, and that the details have to be verifiable. Meaning with every target we do, we always have something that's verifiable. And in these two targets, there was crazy stuff that was just totally verifiable. Your surface of Mars. I mean, it's, a desert planet with it's not a vacuum atmosphere, but it's an incredibly thin atmosphere. And an insectoid with his claws over his head going and also they're verifiable. We know what the surface of Mars looks like, the temperature of Mars, the atmosphere of Mars, and what it looks like in terms of the ground. It's red and it's desert and it's dirt like. So that was verifiable, that no one could dispute. And then the stuff that was happening to him was very unique. So we targeted that. And our viewers are really good at, they're really highly trained to do this. They have to go through like a year-long training program that's full-time, every day, coming in and doing stuff until they are able to do stuff like this. And these people have had like 5, 6, 7 years experience doing this kind of stuff. So it's not just that they're good psychically using remote viewing, that mental process of perceiving information, but they're good at getting the verifiables and writing them down in a special order that we require with complex templates. It's like getting a college degree in this type of stuff. And so they did that. And sure enough, they all came back, and they do it independently of themselves. They're not talking to each other like, hey, what did you get? Or something like that. There's no communication between them. And they all came in with the same stuff. The desert-like Mars planet, a very thin atmosphere, cold as could be. and these insectoids, and this guy on the surface with this big insectoid on top of him with his claws in his head. I mean, what do you get? And what can you do? So I said, holy mackerels, that happened. And then the thing with Yeme, who used to be called Princess, and now she's called Yeme, she, her session, we had the recordings of her session, and her session, I saw her session when she was doing the paper session, as well as when she did the thing on video. I did it. When she does it on video, she's alone she's alone. I mean, I watch it afterwards, but so I really didn't know what happened till I saw it on video. But when but there are two things that happen. She does the solo. She does the paper session. I have to confess, they're not actually papers. They all use these iPad type of things. Okay, this is not an iPad. This is a Samsung. But the general idea. We don't use paper. We're paperless. But nonetheless, she did it using our templates the normal way. And then she did it also when she did it on video in the green screen or something. She got everything. But it's not just her. They all got everything. But the only reason there was something different about Yeme is that when she went into his head, she went into the insectoid's head, which they all did, and they all went into his head. But when they went into into his head, the insectoid didn't mind. Apparently, the insectoid knew who we were, what we were doing, but it was aware of us. But when she went into Tony's head, she realized at some point along the line, further down the line, 10-wise, someone was going to try to make him forget. That was like a big thing. It was a big thing. Like that was a major thing in the timeline coming after. She figured that out by herself. And then she was like silent. When you saw it like the first time, it was like she went silent. And I just thought maybe, she stopped. What happened to her? Did she pass out or something? Something just happened. And suddenly, 5 minutes later, she says, "You will remember." She planted this thought deep in his head so that it couldn't be removed. And it was like, so like when you go into a computer and you get sort of into the root of the computer, you sort of, the root, like the deep part. She planted it there. You will remember. It was amazing. And when I first saw it, I said, it was like, because I sort of, she didn't know anything when she did the target, but I knew I'd read the book. So I knew, I said, holy blankety blank. So that's what happened. That's why he remembered. I said, I don't know if that was why he remembered, but she had planted it deep, and it was so deep. Then when they try to make you forget, it's like a hypnotic suggestion, a powerful one, but it's like a hypnotic suggestion. But if you plant something deep enough it's like into the base code, you will remember. You can't mess with that. And then I said, how did you know that? Like it was written, then he wrote in the book that they were trying to, make him forget. And they said there was something deep they couldn't eradicate. And it was in the book, it was already in the book. Now she was doing this after the book was written. So how could you do that? But with remote viewing, everything is nonlinear. So it doesn't matter. Time doesn't matter. So in the future, she was going into his head to insert something that he was using. But of course, this was 25 years into the future, but she was in the past, going into the future, going into the past, and it's all simultaneous. So, and then when I read, and she had never heard of Tony Rodrigues, and she had never heard of the book. She knew nothing about any of this stuff. But the only difference between her and all the others, they all got everything, including the series part where he's on the ships. But the thing that was unique about her is she's a telepath. She was legally blind for most of her life. It's only this last year that she's been able to see. So we actually paid for operation. She went into an operation to get her eyeballs removed. Not her eyeballs, but her lenses had to be completely thrown out. New lenses had to be put in. It was a $10,000 big thing. And now she sees better than all of us. But because she was also a model, She was a nude model, and that would mean like in artist venues, she would be on the podium, and she would be also in costumes, all types of crazy costumes and stuff. But she couldn't see the people, and she was gorgeous. And so, sort of as a means of defense, this is my theory, as a means of being able to defend herself, she had to develop her telepathy skills, because it was, this gorgeous, beautiful woman who's blind on a podium. She couldn't even get off the podium without somebody sort of helping her get off the podium. And she had artists and photographers around here that would like crowding around here, and they're all sketching. I was actually one of those. I had a pad like sort of like this, a bigger one, and I was sketching at the artist venue, and she was there. And I originally had said, when I had an artist friend of mine, Thomas, we were both commenting. I said, wow, look at all that, the hubbub around her, because she had this charisma. I said, she wouldn't even give us the time of day. Little did I know that she'd be working with us forever. But anyway, but she couldn't see. And she could actually see enough even to drive, but the lenses, those old Coke bottles that had like really thick lenses that like half an inch thick? I mean, if you hold them up to your eyes, you sort of pass out because they're just so. That's what she wore, these like really thick Coke bottles, and she couldn't read anything unless it was super big letters, and she put it 3 inches away from her head. So she never could have read Tony's book. Reading Tony's book is impossible. She couldn't have read it. I mean, 3 big, huge letters, like 3 inches away from her head. That's how she could read. Now she can see better than any of us now. It's amazing. I see her driving around town with no glasses, doing all types of crazy stuff, and I'm saying, wow, that's amazing. But that's what it was for her whole life. So I think it was those telepathy skills that enabled her to pick up immediately what was going on with Tony. And she went in, and then she by herself, she said she planted that. She like planted that. Well, Tony, I don't know if that was what did it, but I saw it happen on screen, and I said, whoa, and it's so closely matched. And then when I had looked at her paper session, and then I compared it to a paragraph in your book where you were describing what the insectoid did, and I compared the two, and I think I even put it up in the video in our there's Tony Rodrigues project that we did with the super soldiers of what was it called again?
Series.
Yeah, series Cavalier. Yeah. So when I actually put up I actually read and compared her written notes to the book, and it was almost like it wasn't plagiarism, but it was like almost a word for word paraphrasing of what he wrote in that paragraph of what the insectoid was doing with the clothes and everything. And I said, whoa, this is amazing. Anyway, so I got multiple remote viewers, and they all did amazing stuff. Aziz did amazing stuff, and they were all really great with the project. It's just the only reason I'm mentioning Yeme, it's not because she was the best. That's not. Everyone has their own strengths. She was good with the telepathy stuff. Aziz and the others, they were really good with like the physical description characteristics of what was going on. But they all got the physical descriptions. But anyway, that was what sort of did it. So I read his book, and I said, either he's incredibly talented cheater that could have figured out all this kind of stuff and make it match up with 70 projects that we've done at Farsight, which is impossible because there was no evidence that he had even looked at any of our projects, or it's real. And so we did this project, and then when we did the ship and the series asteroid business, and we actually went into the asteroids, and inside the asteroid was exactly how he was describing in the book. That sort of satisfied my curiosity. So to answer your question, I'll end it now. Tony, Rob, Nathan, the reason we did that project is I was blankety blank curious. That's why, because the book captured my attention, and I said, how could he have faked something like this? And he nothing in the book mismatched the kind of thing we were getting. Everything matched up. I mean, there wasn't any type of weird stuff that, just didn't make sense, and it's not what we see. Everything sort of matched exactly. And then I said, either he's incredibly good as a I don't know, whatever. I was so curious because everything matched up so closely that I had to see if these two instances actually happened. And they did. And mind you, that was multiple remote viewers under the absolute best, very defendable scientific conditions, totally blind, no communication between the viewers, and they all described exactly the same thing. And then the thing about the Yeme actually going into his head, and after like 5 minutes of waiting there, wondering if she had fainted, said, "You will remember." And she didn't say it like just like a normal voice. It was really like sort of spooky. And I heard on the speaker, "You will remember." It freaked me out. Anyway, that's how that all came down.
That's interesting. Nate, did you have a question, or did you want to kick it off with questions?
I just wanted to make some observations. There's a lot of things in our lives that are basically a product of, interactions, it's a chance. But I think this is a little bit more to it. And you forgot to mention one thing, Courtney, is that because I just watched this segment probably about an hour ago. I didn't have a lot of time to do a lot of homework on this. It was sort of rushed, but the thing that really struck me is that she didn't really talk about everything she was assigned to remote view. As soon as she connected with Tony, she recognized him from someplace. That was the first thing that she said. The second thing that she observed was that he was a very large, and let me rephrase that. He was large energetically. Excuse me. And that says a lot. It also tells me too that there's a lot more, to what's going on that I would say really meets the eye. It's sort of like when I talked about this whole thing with Rob, and it just kind of came it felt spontaneous, but at the same time, I knew that it really wasn't, and there was something actually behind this. So I think that there's a hierarchical structure that's behind all of this, not just Farsight Institute, but everything that's going on with it. And I think this is something that had to happen. And it was just really surprising over the, I'd say, I mean, how long has it been, Courtney? Over probably about 1.5 years since those remote viewing studies were done.
Oh, I can tell you, we publish our publication date. So it's right on our website. I'll go to the website.
I think it was about a year ago, maybe
I'll tell
14
you.
months.
Let's see, September, I think. Before September.
Super Soldiers of Ceres. That was the name of our project, and that was March in 2022.
When it went live, people started contacting me saying, Farsight did you, man. They were like congratulating me, and I really didn't know about Farsight. Your website and what you guys did. I thought, what is that? They said they remote viewed your book, and I thought, well, great, I'm okay, and I just kind of rolled with it, but I didn't know what you guys were at the time. And the thing is, over the coming months, it was people kept saying it, and I was in San Jose at a speaking event on stage, and questions came in from the internet, and Farsight, they said, you were validated by Farsight, and there was a lot to it. So that's when I kind of started watching you guys and tuned into it all. And I was fortunate enough to get a phone call with you and talk about this.
Yeah, we had a phone call. That was great.
The time that she did that, I just want to remark on what you said, like
Sure.
the time that she was viewing. So I did watch it, after you and I spoke on the phone, I did go and watch it, and I'm the same way. I can't sit still through a video. I only do 10 minutes of a video and then come back to it later. But if she was looking at the time specifically on Mars with the bugs, and she had that interaction, that it just dawned on me while you were saying that later on, years later, when I was living on Ceres, I had gone and paid for psychics for like a psychic reading, and the psychics told me the same thing. You're the one that remembers. And I'm wondering if they, you know what I mean? Like saw what she did.
They absolutely did, Tony.
And they queued up on that, because the other thing that happened was after that point, after those psychics told me that, I believed it. And so for the rest of my time there, I would I'm going to remember. I told the captain of my ship, I'm going to remember all this. The psychics told me this. I believe I'm going to. I don't want to forget it. I don't want to forget. And I remember saying that. I remember living that belief for years. And so it may be a domino effect. Like people always ask, like, how did you get your memories back? And I think it's a perfect storm of many different things came together, including her, including what she did. But if it was at Mars and she put that in there at a subconscious level, then it came out later with those psychics. And then I eventually believed it, wholeheartedly, especially on my way back. So kind of mind blowing the way you said that.
There's an interesting thing, Tony. Based on your book and our conversations, it was a really traumatic experience that you had in your life, and the book is like incredibly gut wrenching. I mean, all of the abuse.
Get that a lot. Yeah.
It's got a lot of stuff in it, and all of the abuse that happened. And that's what they do with slaves. Slaves, they get. It's not just someone's a slave and they have to wash your dishes. I mean, they get abused sexually, they get abused physically, they get abused every type of drugs up, everything. You can sort of say, was somebody a bad person for having done that to you? And I'm thinking of the kid that complained to his dad when you were young, and the dad said, "We'll teach him a lesson, give him some humility," and then off you get abducted, and then you get tricked into giving your consent to being and then the whole thing started. The reality, but there's another side to that. On one side, I don't see you being bitter about the whole thing. So, but there's only one thing I'd like to sort of add to that. Had that not happened, had the kid not gotten upset, had his dad not said, "We're going to teach him a lesson," had you not gone off to the 20 years plus because you had that other interlude that dealt with in your second book, had none of that happened, then this whole story would not have come back. And that, given the nature of the whole planet, see, at Farscape, we have really looked into the entire planetary situation. Everybody on this planet's a slave, and they don't even know it. The best slave is the slave that doesn't even know it's a slave. And everyone on this planet, this is a prison. And the prison authorities are still there. And there's this huge project going on right now to free people. And had you not done that, gone back, there was a whole wing, a whole genre of stuff of what the bad ETs were doing that would not have come to the light of day. And our project, your story, not just your story, but now the story of other people who are involved in the various elements of the super space, actually of the what the general thing is, like the secret space program sometimes, and they also call it the super soldiers. Some people call it the 20 and back program. There's a lot of different names that are associated with that. But like Peggy Bradley talks about it, you have talked about it. That whole thing wouldn't have come to light had that thing not happened to you. And the reality is, nobody ever dies. That these bodies are just physical devices, and that we inhabit these bodies. So the reality is, over eternity, you experience almost everything. So this was, that horror that you went through is probably something that everyone that we're looking at right now, plus everyone in the audience, of some time, eternity is a long time. So at some point, almost, everybody has gone through horrors. And the fact that you were able to bring your story back, it's not like I want to go to the kid who was upset with you and his dad and say, "Hey, you guys did a bad thing. You should be punished." It's not like I want to do that. I'm sort of saying, boy, but had they not done that, you would not have gone. Your story would not have come out. The whole experience that you had done would not have come to light. The Super Soldiers of Series project at Farsight would never have come out. A whole bunch of people who came into looking at, these the Super Soldier projects and the Secret Space Program projects, they would not have investigated that. All this stuff that is really important for the current time period for this disclosure process to come out, it would never have happened. So in addition to being a pioneer, Tony, I'm sorry you went through troubles, but you're still here. And eternity is a long time. And eventually it becomes a distant memory. eternity. Do you realize what eternity is? That means nobody ever really dies. That means, like, for if you think of forever as forever, that means you can experience virtually everything.
That's right.
You gave us a window into that type of experience that all of us may actually at some point or in the past or the future have seen or witnessed or experienced. That revelation was important for way more people than your current audience. It's having cascading effects outside. And so it's not like I want to go to the kid and his father and congratulate them for having sent you off to this experience. But on the other hand, had they not done that, you wouldn't be here and you wouldn't be telling this story, and we would not have known so many things happened with that Super Soldier of Series project that we did. We started investigating a whole bunch of other stuff, and a whole wing of new discoveries sort of came out of that. And it was very useful I hate to say it like this, but it was very useful for you to have gone through that and come back out and tell your story.
So, to think of doing it and nothing useful happened would have been the tragedy, right?
Yeah.
And so the bitterness. So everybody on here, the anger and the bitterness from what I went through were in my youth. Long before I got my memories back and ever did a YouTube show, I had already sabotaged and suffered the anger and the bitterness from it for years, for decades. And so that's why people always say, well, Tony, if you've been through that, you'd have PTSD, it'd be so much. But that, it was 40 years ago that I've had to recover. And when I raised my family and had children, that's when I, really let go of my anger, of my lot in life. And so that was it was kind of squashed at that point when I took over being a father. But that's well said. And a few people have asked me, I kind of feel like we all suffer a little bit, and I squeezed it all into like one payment, lifetime. And so that I kind of may have said, I'm going to Earth, huh? Do your worst. And I won't do that again. But I look back on it, and then now for what I'm doing, a lot of people come to me. I interact with a lot of people. And a lot of people come to me with memories and things, and I'm somewhere to go. When I first got my memories back, I had nowhere to go. There was nobody to talk to about it, and I remember how lonely that felt. And so I provide that for people, in a sense. And I just remember how hard it was. And my life right now, these days, is pretty good. So, I don't want to say that I'm happy that it happened either, but it is what it is. Like it's one of those things. I stood my ground. I was myself. I was genuine with that kid, and it led to what happened. And I've been genuine out afterwards, and it led to me sitting here with you people. And so it's a blessing. And I've stuck to my guns the whole time. So it's great. It's just great that other people kind of recognize, and you're saying things that I've felt internally for a long time anyway. So thanks for that. And the work you guys are doing to inspire any kind of new discoveries on what you guys are really, I hate use the word aggressively, but you guys are aggressive remote viewing. You are termed heavyweights in the remote viewing, where, like you said, your viewers are very expert, so they're like heavyweight champions of remote viewing, and you guys are really pushing the art of it. Remote viewing is a bit of an art, I think, and you guys are really pushing it to in aggressive ways. You're looking at very, very strong targets, over time, and that's awesome. So just to be any part of that is a privilege.
The other interesting thing about this is that these abilities that Tony witnessed when he was a captive, a slave, whatever, and the whole process, he witnessed a lot of people having sort of psychic experiences, psychic capabilities, and he witnessed other species having psychic capabilities, insectoids, reptilians, things like that. What people on Earth don't realize is that that's normal. That's what you're supposed to have. And by going through the treatment that people get processed through, sort of an amnesia treatment that people get processed through on this planet between lives, you lose that ability. And, out there, and the way Tony sort of described it, it sort of matched it. But out there, the people that fly around the ships look at Earthlings as a planet of zombies, dangerous zombies. that they have no memories of what they did. They have no connection with their past, but they're just walking around like this is, and they think their bodies are their real lives or the real things. And so out there, and Tony reflected that in his books, and I suppose his interviews, that the ETs don't have a lot of respect, at least the bad ETs don't have a lot of respect for the people down here because they don't know who they are. They sort of, these are dumb guys. They're a bunch of zombies, a whole planet of zombies walking around. And some of the ETs actually think of coming to Earth as a dangerous thing because people are just crazy down here. And
you're not wrong. And they're not wrong.
Yeah, I've had a couple this week in the past 10 days, 3 of them actually. Cyber stalkers, so I know about it.
No, it's correct. People are crazy down here. And so, you're dealing with the planetary population that you've got to try to help at the same time that the planetary population is dangerous. So you're trying to help a group of people who could hurt you, that are sort of in that sense. And then you have a bunch of ETs that are down here that are hybrids or hybrids, you might call it, as Dr. David Jacobs, former professor at Temple, used to call them, which are mixtures of human and ET person. Yeah, and actually the kid that got upset with you when you were young and his dad, they were examples of hybrids. And the hybrids, let me see if I have his book here.
I love Dr. Jacobs, by the way, Courtney. I'm a big fan of David Jacobs. I'm trying to get him on the show, but I think he's sick now. I mean, because he's gotten a little bit elderly, and it's sad because he's one of my heroes. I love Dr. Jacobs' work, so thank you for bringing him up.
Yeah, I was speaking with him just the other day, and he's not in a condition to be on interviews and stuff like that. But I was speaking with him the other day, and I just was thanking him for being the pioneer, because he's an academic. I'm an academic. We were both at major universities. I'm still at a major university. I don't do anything like this at my university. I teach statistics and, nonlinear math courses and elections and stuff like that there. But anyway, this is his book. He has like a bunch of books, but this is one of them, Walking Among Us. And he describes hybrids as there are different types. There are like at the top of the food chain are reptilians. And then underneath that, there are various slave races. And the slave races are insectoids. Under that, tall grays. Under that, short grays. Under that, hybrids, which are half human, half grays. But they still look wonky. They have weird eyes and things. You can still tell they're not quite right. And under that is hybrids. Hybrids are totally indistinguishable from us, from humans, in a physical level. And that's what the kid was that got upset with you when you were a kid. He was a hybrid, and his dad was a hybrid. They have they've not been processed through the amnesia machinery because they're direct out of ships, and they obviously don't have to. They don't have any problems getting IDs and birth certificates and stuff like that. So that's not an issue with them. So they were called, Dr. David Jacobs had called them hybrids. And they're like all over the place. And they have full telepathic and full what Dr. Jacobs calls neural engagement capabilities. And this is something that Tony used to write about often, that some of the ETs were able to control him mentally or control others mentally. And that's called neural engagement, where they get, and these hybrids that are down on the planet, they do crazy stuff. Like, for example, they can be taken to a grocery store and they don't know squat. They don't know how to do anything. They have to go through a whole learning experience for what it's like to be a human. And so they have somebody walking them through a grocery store, showing them what's going on. And the person can say, okay, now we need a shopping basket. And so suddenly some human guy lady would just quickly rush over and give the hybrid their shopping basket. And then they'll go off and get another one. And then sometimes the human guide will say, you can't do that. That's the other person's shopping basket. You have to go get your own shopping basket. You can't just take people's shopping baskets. So but they get this, and the person doesn't remember. So they manipulate the person to actually bring an empty shopping basket to them. Then they go off and get another one for themselves, and they don't remember the whole thing. And then the person, the hubrid, can say, "But what harm does it do?" They don't remember, and so this casual level of neural engagement is so common. So, and Tony was talking about this type of thing. So, having this ability, and actually, the little kid that got upset with you because you insulted him and stuff like that, he was showing off to the girls, trying to attract the girls, as kids would do, showing his mental capabilities. He could read minds. He could, things like that. That's what hybrids do. And, Dr. David Jacobs has described it in detail, what they do. Now, the only trouble with Dr. Jacobs' stuff is that his stuff all comes from the abduction phenomenon. So he only knows the bad ETs. He only knows the bad guys. He doesn't know the good guys. But nonetheless, in terms of an in-depth review of that type of stuff, it was really, really good. And it totally matches what Tony describes in terms of the intricacies of life in those ships and what they do, and those people that describe their personalities and stuff like that. It's like there's no mismatch between what Tony was describing. And Tony, I bet you had never even heard of or read this book or his other books.
Years ago, I quit researching this. Like, I don't watch a lot of videos. I don't research. I research my own memories. I spent a lot of time on the CIA declassified library, but I'm unaware of any of the hybrid thing. I suspected that. So I knew that boy for that school year, excuse me. And he was not a normal person. And it was like, I picked up on it. And I was a little bit surprised. I mean, I was a 10-year-old kid, but I was surprised that the teacher, nobody else really picked up on how awkward he was. And he was way smarter. He was smarter than the teacher was. And he was actually telling her teaching techniques. Like, no, you're not supposed to do that. He was correcting her as she taught the class, and he's a 10-year-old boy. And so that was the weirdest thing that ever I saw. And I always suspected that they were, using a technology for him to be that smart, or he had been through consecutive, like he had already been a grown up and put back, or like a hybrid. But he talked about weird things, like he blatantly said things that he probably wasn't supposed to, because he knew we weren't going to believe it. We weren't going to.
He was a kid.
Yeah, and he was having fun with it. So,
Tony, I have a question. I was going to see if you could talk about, in your new book, Project Starmaker, if you could talk about the consciousness transfer that the dark agendas are currently using. And I figured Dr. Brown could probably relate to that because he knows psi, so he knows a lot about consciousness. So I was wondering if we could talk about that a little bit.
Well, it seems to be one of the first technologies that they trade. So when a species like us gets into space, inevitably you meet an advanced civilization, and the first question is there anything we can trade you for some technology? And it seems to be the very first thing that they give is the 20 and back, the life extension technology through moving consciousness. And they had they had rules for it, and they had a specific technology. What is that called? Like a specific arm of science devoted to that. And that was one of the first things. So it seems to be a very rudimentary, among the stars, it's a rudimentary science. So for them, it's something that's established the same way that we have dentistry. It was like that. So they have their own branch of science, their own set of rules, and their own regulations around it, is what I remember from the program that I was, from the rules that they had to follow. Like, we had to be back exactly in 20 years. They had a very strict set of rules around it. So and then when you look at my second book in Starmaker, how I was basically sold, it wasn't me that was sold, it was my consciousness. And in order to bypass, like a daisy chained out and got more diluted as it went on. So the end around was they put us in an adolescent body. We were in a kind of a watered down adolescent body that was never going to grow to an adult body, and so it required less of our mind to operate, to run it. It seems like that was what. And again, you experience. I always say it like this: when you go into a hospital and you get a surgery, you have no idea what they did to you. right? So you know the experience.
Yeah.
Like I wake up and I'm a little sore on the side and got to get over it. But that's kind of my perspective. I don't really know what they did to me. I don't know how it worked, and there's a lot I don't know. But I'm piecing it together, and it seems like that was the case. My original consciousness was halved into two that occupied the same timeline, and then that one was halved again for a short time, and that was Project Starmaker, like that section of that.
Can you remember when they actually did the soul fracturing procedure? Because I have a memory from the White Sands underground facility where they put me into something that kind of looked like an MRI machine, but it was different. A lot different, actually, because you laid in a chamber that was outside the actual machine. It looked like an MRI. It was an extension of it. And you laid on a table, and this thing came over top of you and sealed, and it filled up full of light. Do you remember anything like that?
You know what? I remember that exactly on the way back. So that was the return, on the return, and it felt like I got incinerated. I felt like it was painful, and that was when they put me back. The original procedure, the first time, they tested me for dominant eye. They gave me exercise, like they wanted to check what was my dominant eye, and they put a needle. There was a gold needle that came down and shot in my. I saw stars the same way. You know, I hope you guys don't know what I'm talking about, but if you get punched really hard and you see stars, it was that experience. It was like I got punched. And I saw stars, and that was it. I lost consciousness, and I woke up in Inyokern. And my first thought, I woke up in my new body. And in Starmaker, the time that they did that, they actually had something that went in here, and they had something behind my head that. So there was a different technology, and it was a table that leaned back only halfway. It was like I was kind of half standing up, and there was a different technology for that. So they accessed, but that was a needle as well. On the return, I think I described it in the book too. It felt like golf ball sized balls of paint that filled up, and there was a chamber of light, like you said. It lit up, like a purplish light lit up around me, and that's when I want to say that I was back to a 10-year-old body. I was back into my 10-year-old body. That was from the adult body that I'd grown into. They put me in that chamber, and I woke up as a 10-year-old, still with my memories back, with my original memories back, and the memories of the 20 years gone. So
and those memories, they started to come back over several years, or because I haven't read your book. So
the original memory of the abduction came back quickly within a few weeks of the abduction.
Okay.
Seeing a gray, but there was nothing. What could I do with that as a kid in 1982?
Very
I always knew that ETs existed. I always had that eyewitness, that flash of there were ETs. I remembered it, the abduction thing. So whenever I saw it in media, I identified with it. Over time, the memories bled through, but they didn't make sense. And so I just shrugged them off. And then it was 2015 when I had the big event. I'm in an MRI scan, and about 10 days later, I got all my memories back. Not all, but the bulk of them.
Have you talked to? I'm sorry, Dr. Brown. I just wanted to mention something real quick.
Go ahead.
Have you sat down with Yemi and actually discussed the possibility that there's a past life connection between the two of you? And she mentioned too that you have a larger energy, or so forth, which leads me to think angelic. The same thing I would say about her. So what have you guys come up with? I mean, is that something that either one of you remembered, or you just have that feeling? Because that's that's how it starts. You feel that connection.
Maybe a month ago, or a little better, I interviewed her for my show. I talked to Tony's show. I have a Patreon show, and we talked at length. We got along really good, and I intend to work with her. She has a course. I'm going to take her course. We didn't really cover a lot of that stuff. It was kind of like just instantly friends. Right out of the gate, you meet some people, it takes a while to warm up to. You meet other people, you feel like family right out of the gate, and that's exactly what it felt like with her.
That's the way I felt with her, and there's a connection. So that's what I wanted, to exploit and explain. Not really exploit, but just to examine. And I had a question for you, Dr. Brown, too, and then I'll let you go. Do you see a potential for this type of remote influencing? Because that's what I call it. When you go back in time, or if you remote view somebody, then you can have access to them. Just think if somebody could go back in time with the authorization of the people upstairs and start to change history without technology, which isn't something you were referring to earlier, that this could be done possibly by anyone. I don't feel that to be the case. I think there's certain people that have the ability to do this, and the authorization as well, because what she did with him, they couldn't reverse. And they did everything that they could. In fact, I remember you telling your story, Tony, where they were going to give you some kind of like a lobotomy, which would have been horrible. And somehow you got around that. I mean, so the question is, what's the potential here? I mean, if you could go back and steer Martin Luther King away from being assassinated, or maybe, JFK, you could have substantial impact on what's going on now in the present and alter the future. And this is the first time that we've got an example of this under scientific conditions. And it isn't completely, I mean, there's still so many unanswered things to look at here, but what is your opinion on this? And do you think that this may be something that Farsight may do in the future when it's felt to be necessary? Because you've unleashed somebody that's a significant agent of change who has had an impact on so many people in this community. And that's why I wanted to get you two on, so that you could have this discussion, because I mean, it's so important to so many of us.
Well, there's a lot of misunderstanding about our basic nature, and probably the biggest misunderstanding is that there's one version of us. So if you talk about could we go back in time and change things, the answer is obviously yes, but it's in the context of there being an infinite number of timelines. And we have extensively investigated this, but it also has a good basics in physics. He was Hugh Everett, who got his PhD under John Wheeler, quantum mechanics, in Princeton in 1957. He was the one who came up with the basic idea that there is no such thing as a single reality. He was the inventor of the other worlds theory of quantum mechanics, the other world's interpretation of quantum mechanics. And the generalization of that is that there are infinite numbers of realities. So it's not like there's a separate single reality and someone's being given authorization to go back and change that reality, and then you have a new reality. All realities, all possibilities exist. In fact, it's impossible to think of something that doesn't exist in some way. So yes, you can. In fact, I had a science fiction story I was developing. We were putting it up on Farsight's website as a comic strip, and then there was a complaint made about it at a university level, and so I took it down. But I didn't mind taking it down. But the whole idea, because we were going to try to sell it to Hollywood as a science fiction series, the basic idea was that there was that I remembered who I was, and that I had been married before on another in the Orion system with a lot of, the totalitarian authoritarian system. And we were part of a rebel faction, and my wife had been a leader in the rebel faction, sort of Star Wars like, with the Jedi type things. And I got killed first, and I managed to get here. I came to Earth as sort of a refugee, and then the instructions were that when she got killed eventually, she was to find her way to Earth. But she was a rebel leader that was highly polarized, so the closest she could get to Earth was to the right place, but the wrong time, 200 years in the past when there was slavery. So she ended up being a black slave in the slavery in the Deep South. And then my son and I, Aziz, had to find her. We finally located her. Gosh, she was in the right area, but 200 years in the past. So we had to get permission from the government to go back, and the plan that we had was to allow us to use the ET tech to go back in time and change society a little bit so there'd be less racism in the current time. So the idea was we'd go back and produce some type of African-American military force that would be like a phantom military force that would show up and produce sort of this mystique of these advanced black soldiers coming up and rescuing slaves at certain points in times, and it was sort of ripple through time, and so that there'd be less racism at the current time. We'd go back and forth in time and sort of check how it's doing and tweak it here and tweak it there. But the real reason for this whole project was to go back and save my wife, who got stuck 200 years in the past. And so I had a situation where we finally got down there, and the authorities had said, "But don't rescue her, because it's, she's living a new life." I said, "Don't worry, I won't." Well, the first thing I did when I got down there is I went to find her, and she was on the Decatur courthouse steps being sold as a slave, and I said, "I'll buy that one." And she didn't remember who she was, and there I was on a comic strip buying this slave on the Decatur courthouse, trying to convince her that she was actually General Zyron, not a slave, and she was calling me master and stuff. Anyway, that caused a bit of a stir in at university levels, and somebody complained, and I had to take it down, and the whole thing. But it was fine. We were really just trying to sell it as a movie someplace. But she was actually not a slave. She was a general in the resistance movement. But anyway, I think the people that complained never actually read the comic strip. They just saw me buying a slave on the courthouse, and they said,
Yeah.
Kind of a hot
And they had a
button
knee-jerk reaction.
But the whole idea is going back in time and changing it, and then going backward and forward and seeing how it worked. Did you tweak it enough? Do you have to go back and change it a little bit more, and so on? So this idea is, yes, Nathan, it can be done, but you're not changing the timeline. You're just sliding along a different timeline, of which there are zillions. And the ETs do this with random whatever. They do this all the time. And for us, it seems like, but that's why they call this like a zombie planet, that people don't remember that this is correct. By the way, I can mention something with regard to what Tony was saying about the memory loss. And this is actually important for people. They don't really understand. When we're living in these bodies, there's a close connection between, we don't use the word soul or spirit. We use the word Isby, someone who is for the purpose of being. And Isby, we are all Isbys. And we inhabit and animate these physical bodies. So the Isby, every single night, it detaches from your physical body and you have dreams. And then you get back, it pops back in, reassembles, reconnects with the physical body. Memories in the physical body are like memories in the computers. They're physically, electrochemically registered in the brain. And the Isbys are used to doing that, to connecting with the physical brain, and then the physical brain sort of dominates. But that's why the memories go away. And that's why it's hard to remember things, because you don't remember things unless it gets literally registered inside the computer. It has to be electrochemically registered, and you have the experiences in your dream outside of the body. And then when you come back in, you're connecting up to the body, but it has no memory written in the electrochemical stuff of the brain. And so the best you can do is try to write down your dreams. When you're still in sort of the foggy state, you're half in, half out. If you can write down your dreams, and then in the morning, I do this every night. And then in the morning, you look at the dream written on a piece of paper. You don't remember squat. You dreamed that, but it slowly starts to come back, and it starts to reconnect. So that's what Tony had to go through. He had to go through a period of sort of going in and out, in and out, in and out. But he was following the breadcrumbs till he finally pieced it all together. And then those memories, because he was consciously following the breadcrumbs, those memories were slowly assembling themselves in the electrochemical consciousness. And here you have him today, where he's able to talk about the whole stuff. But it took a long time for him to get each of those pieces that he experienced outside of the physical body registered in the electrochemical brain, so that he could actually talk about them here in his body with his brain, so that we can understand it with him talking into a microphone.
Sorry. And that's why his memories are so important for a lot of us, because it helps to unlock our own. And I just wanted to mention, I just wanted to ask you something. You said, I don't know if I heard this right. Did you say that you're in the Asasani resistance movement in a past existence? Is that what you're describing?
Yeah, actually, that was biographical. I was trying to figure out some way to let that biographical aspect come out. And yeah, I and my wife, we were part of we were in the resistance movement, and we called it, some people called it the, it went by a whole bunch of different names, but there were different parts of it. Some of them called it the Black League. The Black League, and that's an English translation, but that basically they tried to keep themselves hidden. So when you remote view them, they can see you're coming, and they say, "Go away, go away. We're not
Yeah.
supposed to be discovered," type of thing. But the whole idea is that there was a resistance movement. It was very, very Star Wars-ish, where they had a resistance movement fighting against the evil empire. And the evil empire was trying to crush everybody, and that's where it went on that side. So now things have evolved to a different level, and now we're here on Earth. This planet was originally a refugee planet. This is not a good planet to be on in terms of long-term civilization. Every 20, 30,000 years, there's a pole
An,
shift.
an
I mean,
engineered pole shift and cataclysm, from what I understand.
yeah, and the civilizations get
They
wiped
reboot
out.
the planet. The
Yeah,
way they
so
set
that,
us back, just like they took his memories and mine and yours and everybody else's, they also reboot the planet. So you have a collective amnesia.
well, this planet
And
was
not
never
just that, but I was going to say we might be in some kind of forced reincarnation cycle. Is that
We definitely
true,
are.
Dr. Brown?
Yeah, we call that the death traps. That's the bad ETs run it. It was actually started by a group coming out of the Orion system, which was where we were talking about the resistance movement against the Orion system. But it's been picked up and used by the later groups, including the reptilians. And basically, when you die physically, you see the light. You've all heard of these, seeing of the light. Well, that light is a wave that sort of beamed. It's an attractor. It's like a moth getting attracted to a light. And as you get closer to the light, the more you resist it, it's like gets you stuck. It gets you stuck. The more you resist it, the more stuck you get. And then you're treated with a very, very high voltage, like an electroshock treatment. And it's way higher than like lightning. And it rattles you. And your memories go, your ability to remote view or perceive go, but you're still there. And then an AI comes in and packs you in with a whole bunch of memories. It sort of recreates you. And a lot of some of it matches what you had before, but it basically, and then they come and they say, but we just talked about your case with the Council of Elders. See the Council of Elders over there? Yeah, we talked about your case, and we think you need to work out a few wrinkles. Remember the argument you had with your grandmother? Oh, and your son was not. There was a little tension between you and your son, and he needs you. And that thing you dealt with your daughter or your parents. They sort of said, we think you should go back and tweak a little bit more, develop your personality, but it's all up to you. You make your decision. Inevitably, the person says, because they have no memory, no real memory, the person says, you're right. I need to go back and work that out. So they get recycled back in. So you get processed through the amnesia system. And that was, yeah. So in terms of my own biography, I didn't come through that system. So I wasn't rattled like that. So the hybrids that Tony read into, they of course they didn't go through that. But you still have to remember, even though I wasn't processed by that, I still had to remember. I still came into a physical body, and I still had to go through a long process of piecing everything together. Now, Aziz, my son, his recovery of his memories, he was really driven. That was like really a big thing. So he was really driven to get his memories back quickly. Now, Tony can really, and he can talk about once he realized that there were memories he had to remember, he was driven to remember those, and he was focused. He's talked to you just today about how driven he was to piece all that stuff together. That's the way Aziz was. Me, I took decades. I was having a good time here. It took me a long time to piece it all together. But I eventually pieced it all together. Tony was a race car compared to me. I was a turtle.
Yeah, I can say the same thing. I just want to mention one thing real quick to him, and I'll let you talk, Tony. When I conducted the interview with Rob the first time when I met you, I could see the gray in you. I could actually see the higher self kind of superimposed over you. It was one of the things I was going to email you about, but I'm really horrible with that kind of stuff. I mean, I've got so many things going on, and I get sidetracked. And the other thing that I noticed too, the last time you were on this show, I was supposed to be here, but the scheduling got screwed up and I didn't make it. But I noticed when you brought up the grays and you talked about the remote viewing study that you just did, and not the most recent one, but the one just before that, I could tell that you got emotional, and I wish I would have been there to capitalize on that, to talk to you about it, because I could tell that you lost your train of thought. And I could tell that you were holding back emotions and trying to keep your composure. And because you're a lecturer, that's not something you normally see. It's something that normally comes from a very high emotional, spike. So I just wanted to let you know that. And I think what's going to happen eventually is after this planet gets cleaned up is, the grays are going to be cleaned up as well. And that horrible atrocity will be reversed. And then the healing can start. So I just wanted to mention that. I'm sorry, Tony. Why don't you go ahead?
I'm not sure where to pick up after all that. There's quite a lot went in every direction.
It's off in a whole different direction.
I just want to say that the experience of recovering my memories was over a great deal of time, over that whole from the age of 10 years old all the way to 40 years old. During that time, I would get bits and pieces back, and they were not dream like, they were memory like. But it didn't make any sense, because I thought, when did I do that? When did I live in a place? Because in the memory, as I remembered it, the places that I was standing were old to me. They were very familiar. So there was this sensation of, at my workstation, having worked there for years, in the experience of it, just like being in your house.
Right.
And so I always thought to myself, when did that happen? And I was kind of put a conscious wall against it. Like, that doesn't make any sense. That's not possible for that to have been. And then later on learned about the 20 and back technology, that they can take you and put you back in the same night. And that's when all in one moment, I thought, that's what happened. I was gone. That explains it. My reason for not remembering, for fighting the memories for coming back, all for years, for decades, the one reason was taken away. And I thought, that's what happened. And then once I can entertain the memories, they all came. Like, you have to believe that they're real before more will come. And that's what happened. In my case, it happened in a matter of minutes. As soon as I realized that that's what was going on, the rest of the memories just poured in, big chunks of memories.
How are you able to handle the emotional fallout of that? Because usually when I get a memory, it's extremely intense. I start to cry. I start to shake.
Right. It was very difficult, and it lasted for months. The first few months were very difficult. And I was, like I said, I really needed somebody to reach out and speak to about it. And there was nobody available. And so I fell in the arms of researchers. So, I was a witness, and I reached out to people, and researchers were my counselors at that point, which they were only interested in proving their own work based on collaboration from my memories. So
Right.
It wasn't exactly the same as somebody listening to you with an idea of what it feels like. So the emotional end of it was very difficult, especially when I started at the very beginning. I remembered a few things, but I didn't remember a lot of the abuse. And when I did remember that, I thought, there was a real loss of inner innocence to the abuse that I'd been through.
Right. You feel violated. So, it's just like being raped, and then.
Well, I guess it answered a lot of questions about why I was very sensitive to many subjects, and why I had symptoms of PTSD without any real trauma.
Yeah, I went through the same thing. Anything with near-death experiences, anything like that, that would always be a trigger for me. Anything that has to do with that or afterlife would always get to me, and I would find myself kind of hiding away from whoever I was with to go cry it out and let it out of myself, so to where I could handle it.
But when Tony says he remembered these things over a period of a month, it was really intense. That doesn't mean that he really remembered all that stuff at that time. That means that over a long period of time, those memories were coming back and being inserted into his electrochemical brain, but that there was a conscious resistance to them.
That's right.
So it was like the stuff was there, and it was slowly being inserted, because you can't think of anything that's not embedded electrochemically, just like in a computer. It's got to be registered electrochemically in the brain. So all that stuff had to be there. And then what happened is that the psychological elements broke down, meaning psychologically, the wall came down, and those memories, which he had gradually been reassembling subconsciously, were able to come to the front, and that was the traumatic month he felt. It wasn't that the memories were coming back at that time, but
it was the realization that they were real.
Yeah, they came to the surface and suddenly came up on his screen, and they were staring at him.
Yeah.
Tony, I have a question.
I just want to mention one thing real quick. When you were formulating your memories, and as they were coming in the beginning, was there like a framework where you knew certain things and then it just started to fill in? And when I say a framework, it's like a knowing of like, I was abducted or so forth, and then things start to take shape, and then the fragments start to make sense. So it's kind of like a knowing of something, and then you get the fragments, and then you piece it together, and then it just kind of mends itself over time with all the emotional impact.
In the beginning, it was just the big emotional moments, and there was a lot of gaps in between them, but the bullet points.
Because the emotional memories and the conceptual memories are, you sort of get the emotional stuff first. That's what I meant by the framework. It's the knowing that something's happening and you feel it, but then the fragments come in. So I guess that's what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay.
And over time, I mean, I'm still remembering. So,
yeah.
Just a few months ago, I went to Inyokern in person and went there and recovered a lot of, remembered a lot of nuanced things that I didn't think of before. So,
was that where you were when you were a child when they were doing the sex trafficking with you?
No, that was near Seattle.
Okay.
But Inyokern was the first stop, was a program, and I found a lot of evidence around Inyokern, around that program, that whatever, that's a story in its own. But my point is, I'm still remembering. I still get memories, although not a lot, but details.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Ryan. One of the questions from the audience was someone asked, why Inyokern to Seattle? They said, is that because there's ancient tunnels? This is from Sovereign Cosmic Wildman. He's just speculating. He says, why Inyokern to Seattle? Is it because there's ancient tunnels that run all through the Sierra Nevadas to PNW volcanoes and the San Juan Islands? He's just kind of,
So I don't know about any of that stuff. The program was there. So that was just, it was come to find out that Inyokern is the Naval Ordnance Testing Station. So for naval, or like they invented the Sidewinder missile there. They invented the rocket pods on planes. Like it's an ordnance testing station. And we were an Army INSCOM project of psychoenergetics of those kids. That's what they were doing. And next door in China Lake, there was an underground train station that took us. I think we had a stop in San Francisco, and then I ended up in Montana, where I was picked up and driven to Seattle. So as far as all the other history of it, I have no idea.
Yeah. One more thing I want to ask you about is before anybody else, I just want to ask you, in Star Maker, where you've recovered these new memories, you worked with a psychic, and it seems like she was really helpful to you to free up a lot of these memories. Like, can you talk about that a little bit? And then I was wondering, did you guys use like hypnotic regression, or like how did it come about? That sounds really interesting.
No, I've never been under hypnotic regression. Jackie Kenner at the time, she was a co-host of mine. So Jackie saw me in an interview, and it kind of startled her own memories of her childhood. So she had her own experiences, and when she saw me talking about it, as what happens to a lot of people, she contacted me immediately. And she had a podcast, and I talked to her, and we became friends, and we co-hosted a show together. And in between, as you guys all know, that when you get off camera, there's really a lot of good talking that happens. And after we would get done filming, she would ask me questions. Tony, how did you know that? How did you remember that? And I would tell her bits and pieces. And she's, after a while, she said, because she's a psychic medium, so she does readings for people, from the other side. So she has a great deal of experience of talking to people on the other side. She's a full-time psychic medium. And she goes, this is the story that you need to tell, not Ceres Colony Cavalier. She's like, this is the important story of the near-death experience memories. But that wasn't what was coming out in interviews. So Ceres Colony Cavalier is my linear account. And so after that, she was really motivated to write Star Maker, which there wasn't a lot there. Those are very, very distant, I'm really stretching for those memories. They're very distant versus the closer memories of Inyokern, what's in Ceres Colony Cavalier. And then we wrote it to be kind of purposely confusing. I did that on purpose. Project Star Maker kind of jumps around into several small stories, And I did that on purpose because that's the experience of getting the memories back. They don't all come back in a perfect story of front to back. They come back at places that have highs and lows of emotional content. So you remember this thing, and then you remember this thing, and then you kind of sort out the linear account of it. So I wrote Star Maker to read like the experience of remembering is.
That's fascinating. Nate, or Courtney, did either of you guys have another question or?
Oh, I have something to say, but I'll let you go, Courtney, if you have something you want to add.
I was going to, there was something I was going to talk about with regard to something that Tony had said that, but I'll bring it back. I'll bring back my memories.
That's okay. It happens to me. It happened to me last time I was here. So it happened.
It happens a lot. It happens a lot. I feel like it's like I feel like someone's messing with us or something. I know that's crazy to say.
No, it isn't.
Oh, I remember. I remember what it. I remember what it was.
He's stronger than the enemy.
That's a good analogy. I was talking about this with my son Aziz today, or was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday. There's a struggle on the planet right now between what we call the good ETs and the bad ETs. The bad ETs still control the planet. This is essentially their territory. But the good ETs, they're more dominant in the solar system, but they have this fanatical belief in free will. And so they can't like invade, because the bad ETs would just blow up the place and they wouldn't give a hoot. Remember in Star Wars when when Princess Leia was sort of forced to tell them the location of the rebel base? It was actually an old rebel base location, but she did it anyway. And they said, if you don't tell us where the location is, we're going to blow up your homeworld. Then she told them, and then they blew up the homeworld anyway. So it's like that. They wouldn't give a hoot about turning the whole planet into a cinder, because it would like, don't mess with us or we'll destroy everything. And so my son and I were talking about this. The whole idea that the bad ETs are gone is just crazy. I mean, Tony can tell you they're very powerful. They got a lot of stuff. You can't chase them away like cockroaches that you just sort of spray and then they go. They've got ships. They got a big investment in the planet. They got, 8 billion humans, physical humans, plus a zillion other non-physical ISBs under their wrap. They're not going to walk away from something like that. So we were trying to decide what does victory look like if the good ETs win this moment in time that we're going through right now. And it's an interesting thing because it relates to what Tony went through. You just can't rescue somebody that feels like they're a slave, that is a slave, you just can't go in and say, wake up and slap them, choo, 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 slap out of it, snap out of it. You've got to rescue. There's a couple of things. First of all, you can't rescue us in physical form. You can't rescue human beings, these physical bodies. First of all, what are they going to do with our physical bodies? They don't have, like Tony was in that other type. Each body he was in had different type of needs for waste disposal. And the ET ships, they don't have the ability to deal with our plumbing, the amount of waste material, solid and liquid that we do, our food requirements. And also just think about our physical bodies. We're filled with pathogens. We've got viruses of all types. Everybody's got mumps, measles, or all types of viruses you can imagine. Coronavirus. I mean, everything you can imagine we have, and we just can't walk into the ET ships. Those are sterile environments. You just can't take these people.
Are you trying to say they're all full of shit? That's what it sounds like.
So the point is, if you're going to rescue people, you cannot rescue them in their physical body. You have to, but if you actually go to somebody and say, look, we got to rescue you. You're caught here and there's an amnesia system and you're all caught into it and we got to rescue you. And by the way, you got to drop off your body and we got to take you. They're going to say, what? I mean, they go panic struck, the whole thing. They think you're killing them, the whole thing. So what does victory really look like?
It looks like infiltration, Dr. Brown. That's what it looks like.
Well,
I think we're all kind of guilty of that here.
ultimately, victory will look like setting up centers where people can leave. And that means leave their physical body and be their is-be self that you are when you're dreaming at night. That's your real self. And so, and then once they leave, they can go into a ship, and then they can go in that form. That's your normal form that most people don't even know they have. They think that they hope and pray that they have a soul and the soul can be saved. The reality is the soul is all they have. The is-be is all they have. The physical body is just a piece of machinery. But that is-be part is the only thing that can be saved. And that's got to be removed away from the amnesia machinery that causes the recycling of lives and so on. You have to physically get that. You have to get that person out. So what does the future look like? There's going to be a zillion people that will not buy into this. So what the future looks like is a huge disclosure program, a huge disclosure where it's going to be tremendously chaos for all the information about what the bad ETs have been doing, what the ETs, that there are good ETs, a huge disclosure, just people being told what the truth is. A certain percentage of those people will then grasp it, understand it, and say, okay, we're ready to go. The rest of the people are not going to be ready, and you cannot rescue them. You're going to have to catch them on the next one, on the next go around. You just can't rescue them. And that means that the bad ETs may continue working with those people because they're going to, the good ETs have this fixation towards free will. And if those people free will say, no, we like the old system, the good ETs are going to respect that. So you can only rescue a certain proportion of the people. And just imagine what you have to get through. You have to get those people to agree that their physical body is just a machine, that their real self is an is-be, and that's what's going to go into the ship, and that's what's going to go. And when you're an is-be, you look like you're saying your normal self. I mean, you can still push buttons and you can still fly in ships, but you have to, there's a whole learning process that's going to have to happen. And that's how you get as many people out as possible. The rest of everybody that stays here is going to have to go, including scientists, they're going to have to burrow down and start investigating how to disassemble the amnesia machinery that happens when people die. It's a long stuff that has a lot of stuff has to happen. But that whole idea that what Tony went through is normal, that whole idea has to be taught to people. So, Tony, your experience goes beyond just what happened to you. Literally, that type of thing of being taken out of bodies, put into bodies, things like that, that has to become like common sense to everybody, or they literally can't get off of this planet. They can't get out of the prison. So your experience is actually much more wide-ranging in application to a rescue effort than just your experience. It's not just talking about the 20 and back program. Everybody has to be rescued, and it can't happen unless they understand that the mechanics of what you went through. And you described the mechanics so perfectly. I said, there's no way he could have dreamed that up. So that's what really caused us to really want to get into this project that he did. And yeah, it turned out to be real. But basically, that was what I wanted to tell you, that the end game. So when you actually hear people talk about saying the bad ETs have all been chased off and now we're just trying to, that's all garbage. That's all rubbish coming in from the bad ETs that are still trying to pollute the information pool down here so that we don't get real disclosure. And the people that are saying it are not bad people. They're great people. They just, they're just getting their information from the wrong sources. But it's part of the information pollution. The bad ETs are still here. Nothing's changed. Everything's big. In order to get that off, so that all the people that actually captured Tony and did everything to him, in order to get that all disassembled so that people can get out of this thing, you're going to have a disclosure process that is huge. Now, Tony, let me ask you, if Rob and Nathan, you don't mind me asking Tony a question, let me ask
Sure.
Tony, will you comment on the level at which the ETs that were involved with you were willing to lie in order to deceive you and other people around you,
From
in order
top
to
to
get you.
bottom.
So, okay. I've had people, like, I get attacked, right, a lot. So, and it'd be weird if I didn't, for the things I'm saying. Like in this conversation, the normal person off the street can't come in the middle of this conversation and make sense of it. So people are, when I try to get in the head of, we call them good guys and bad guys, or good ETs and bad ETs, and I don't see it 100% that way either. I don't see things as all black and white. A lot of the program managers, a lot of the people during my time that I would take, they were humans. They were people that were treating me that bad. So we have prisoners, we have people in the prison, population, and we don't treat them great. Many times in warfare, humans don't treat humans great. In cities, humans don't treat humans great. So there's a blurry good and evil there. When you talk about with a level that they would deceive or lie, once you don't have respect for a human, so somebody in your life that you've lost respect for, that's constantly doing something wrong, you don't feel any kind of guilt or remorse by lying to them or coaxing them to say, no, that's closed for the day, you're going to have to leave. So this is the level, like to answer your question, Dr. Brown, they don't have respect for us. They see us as a lower life form. The bad, as we call them, the bad guys, the Orion group.
They see us as livestock.
A lower life form. Yes, exactly. So it's like talking to a child. We all told our kids about Santa, right? And so we're not bad for that. But the thing is, we didn't respect their intelligence, and so we do that. And the ETs feel the same exact way. They see us as somebody that doesn't deserve honesty. And they don't see us as peers, and so that's the behavior. And when you talk about the good ones being ejected and the bad ones, or what, vice versa, the bad ones being ejected, they all at some point do business with each other. They all coexist among the stars on other planets. We're not the only game in town. This isn't the only corner of the galaxy that they hang out in. The intergalactic community is very widespread. They do business with each other the same way that countries get along and don't get along. There are countries we don't speak to, we still do business with, we still have trade rules with, we still have ambassadors in countries where the populace hates our guts. And it's kind of the same way. So I always want to pull a pin on it and think that, because the other danger in that is believing that some race out there is always going to be a good guy, whether they're your friends or not. That doesn't mean they're always going to care about your best interests. And they get along just like people are. And the amount that they would lie to us is exactly what you would expect from a life form that doesn't have any respect for us as a peer. We're not their peers. So yeah, they would tell us whatever they need to get, and they're very smart. And some of them are on a hive mind. So it's not even them individually lying to us. It's the entire species communicating in a hive mind, lying to us. The same way that salesmen, when they go in for a sale, they all get on the same page, and they're not overtly lying, but they're concealing the truth. It's the same thing.
Tony,
And
I was sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was wrapping up anyway.
I was going to say, do they loosh feed off us as well? We hear that in the community, that they feed off our loosh.
We do it off each other.
Did you ever witness?
Yeah, that's for sure.
We do it off each other. So, they have highly developmental abilities that we are unfamiliar with. I believe we're stunted. I believe we would be way more developed mentally and spiritually had we not been stunted all through. When you start looking at the polar shift in public programming of our children versus how we were raised, in the belief systems that the government and school comes through the SCORM score, which is the Department of Defense. When you look at the influence that school has on children, you have to look back and look at how we were influenced too. We're not right. So many people are resisting what's happening now in the schools for what they're teaching kids. But the thing is, it's because we were taught the opposite and from the same source. So a lot of our beliefs have been programmed into us from a nefarious source as well. So we're seeing what's going on with the kids now, and we're like all up in arms. But the reality is that somewhere in the middle, well, the truth will present itself. Time will tell. But I mean, we have been programmed just as bad as they are programming the kids, is my point. I don't know. Does that answer your question? I forget where we were.
And we've also been socially
Yeah.
and psychically, mentally, basically programmed by the negative ETs, which aren't all negative because there's individuals within that hierarchy who are just doing a job. I had interactions like that myself, so I can vouch for what you're saying, Tony. But overall,
I
it
wanted to
really
just
comes
ask-
down to a lack of emotional intelligence, a disconnection from the creator, which is why they do this type of exploitation.
You know, there's another dimension to this that you have to sort of wrap your head around in the process of recovery. When Tony was recovering, it wasn't like in a day. It wasn't in a blink. He had to slowly get used to these ideas one at a time, and he's still recovering memories, meaning he's slowly getting used to. It wasn't a switch. He just did a switch and everything came back. Well, when you have an experience as a human being like this, and this gets to Nathan, what you were talking about with regard to my past and also the past of Grays and so on. When you're rescuing humans, you're taking them as they are. They have a past. You can't throw them into some other type of body that's completely different and just say, slap out of it, get used to it. You have telepathic capabilities. Your everything's no.
They fall apart very, very, very quickly.
Yeah, you have to. Once they have been in these bodies, they get used to it, and then their personalities sort of adjust to that. So, with regard to the Greys, that was a civilization that was normally just like us. They were humans, a little bit more emotional than us, and they were captured. They were forced into these robotic type, these bodies that had very limited capabilities for emotional, or no capabilities for emotional experience, and they were used as drones, very much like the Borg in Star Trek. And the reptilians, which actually did it, they do almost everything through proxies, and that's exactly what Tony experienced. The reptilians were on the top, but always it was other groups, other beings in between the reptilians and him that were manipulating everything. So the reptilians actually stuffed these guys into bodies that were Greys, and then over time that became their experience. So when you rescue a Grey, you can't slap them into one of our bodies. You just can't say, all right, pull your Isby self out. You're now Courtney. You just can't do that because it's too much of a shock. And the good ETs have this thing about free will. And basically, you have to say, well, what can you do? So what we have in the good ETs, you have a whole bunch of Greys that have been rescued from the bad ETs, and they look and act the same way but they have been rescued, but they have to they have to go through a process like Tony had to go through a process of getting his memories back. They have to go through a process of bringing everything back, and it's not easy to bring the memories back, even for a Grey, of where they were, what they did in the past. I remember Yame Genet went into the head of an insectoid that was, I don't know if it was one of the insectoids in Tony's experience, but it was another insectoid that was just like the insectoid that Tony had experienced. But this guy was more of he was a slave, and she went into his head and started to communicate with the guy and say, what about your experience? And she actually went into his head and went back in time to who he actually was before he was the insectoid sleigh on a reptilian ship. And he went back in time, and she pulled a lot of stuff out. And then when she was done with him, if you could say that, he said, actually, you were helpful. You brought back a lot of memories I didn't know about. I didn't remember all these things, so you did this. And then she left. The point is, that didn't mean he's not an insectoid anymore. That means he just had some memories brought back. So every time you rescue someone, you're rescuing them with their past experiences, and they have to grow, just like Tony grew. And Tony, you may think that it took you lots of years, but honestly, 30 years is a piece of. You were a race car driver in the Indianapolis 500 compared to most people.
Thank you.
Most people take, lifetimes. Many friends who are grays are still grays, and they're working through it lifetime after lifetime, centuries, to slowly bring back who they were. And they were just like us. They had both. These are friends of mine. But you don't tell them, hey, snap out of it. They have to go through that experience to bring themselves back. So you're going to have grays on both sides. The ones we mostly interact with, the ones humans mostly interact with here, are grays that are working as slaves. Even the hybrids, like that kid that you interacted with, Tony, when you were young, and his father, they may not have thought of themselves as slaves, but they were slaves. They were in the system. They couldn't rebel from the system and get out of the system and do it. They were captive, even if they didn't recognize that. They might have said, no, they're voluntary. And the good ETs couldn't have come in and rescued them. They would have fought back. They would have said, no, this is my situation. Get out of here. I don't want to be rescued. This is what I do. I'm supposed to throw Tony into a 20 and back program. This is what I'm supposed to be living.
Yeah, I'm in charge. They think they're in charge.
Yeah, exactly. And so, this whole, you can't rescue people who don't want to be rescued just because you think they need to be rescued. So that's what the end game. That's what victory looks like. The victory looks like not suddenly chasing out the bad ETs like you sometimes hear on late night radio, that they're all gone now. There's no chasing them out. The victory looks like getting to the point where a full disclosure process happens, and then people start to slowly assemble what happened to them, the traumas of what happened to them, and who the bad ETs were and how they've been manipulating things for thousands of years. That whole process has to start. And then the process has to start of reintegrating their memories of who they actually were. And they're not going to do it Tony Rodrigues style in 30 years. They're going to take a long time. So, Tony's actually going to be a hero to them. He may not recognize them, but he's going to be someone that brought back his memories quick. And so to him, it's like, this is what his journey is. To others, it's like, he showed us that it was possible. That's how they're going to remember Tony. They're going to say, I know I can do it because Tony did it. It may take them long, but Tony, if you didn't do it in one lifetime, you wouldn't have had the story to tell for people to be able to look at you and say, if Tony did it, I can do it too. It may take me a few centuries. It may take me a few lifetimes. But you're talking about memories that are not just from a 20 and back program. You're talking about memories going back to zillions of lifetimes that they had in other star systems before they got here on Earth in the first place. That's a lot of stuff to reintegrate. And that's what victory is. Victory is a process. It's not a VE day, a victory day. It's a long, long, long process. But the process starts with the disclosure. So anyone that tells you that the bad ETs are gone, it's just not the case. You will know that the disclosure process, when it becomes big, when it tumbles out and everybody's talking about it and pandemonium is all over the place and everyone's talking, and Rob and Nathan, you may be seeming like crazy people on the late night radio, suddenly become mainstream. That's when it starts. That's when it starts. There's going to be a time when you guys become heroes because you are actually keyed into this stuff before. You got 8 billion people on this planet that don't have a clue. And you have been talking about it for years on late night radio. That people don't know any memories at all. And Tony has gotten all or a huge chunk of his memories back in 30 years. Tony, it took me longer than 30 years, and I wasn't put through any type of amnesia process. Anyway.
What we're seeing, though, is we're actually seeing an intuitive awakening across the planet, and certain groups of people are more susceptible or more sensitive to this. So we are seeing that, and we are seeing the beginning of it. That opens up the foundation for what you're talking about, which is a long-term social engineering project. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I want to say this. The other thing that we as a society right now, pre-disclosure, don't have are the good examples to follow. So we think that the official narrative, we're the top of the food chain, and that's it. And evolutionary wise and spiritual, there's nothing to aspire to be better to. So it's very easy to lead people into consumerism and false beliefs because we're not even trying to better ourselves. Some people do, and some people really work at it. You know, when things aren't working out for you in your situation, you begin to better yourself. But as a whole, as a species, we're not. We're not really. The people are, they want to reach a certain level of consumerism in America, and then that's it.
That's the pacifier for the lack of the I guess you call it emotional intelligence. Really, people aren't heart-centered anymore. They're conditioned not to be.
Post-disclosure, we'll start to understand how other beings live throughout the universe. We'll start to see, we're going to get a galactic-wide internet. And we're going to see that other beings are much more advanced spiritually and mentally than us. And people will begin to aspire. And so that's going to be one of the big catalysts, to have something, to have a being that lives a few thousand years that is very mentally gifted. People are going to want to behave and do the things that it does. And so we don't have that now, and that's something that a post-disclosure will give us. The other thing that I thought was neat that he was talking about is that you can see it in people. Not all the time, but when you go to conferences specifically, you meet a lot of people that really this is their first incarnation as a human. So they're not, like you can see other past lives on people that behave very differently. It's because they just got here. And that's the whole starseed magic, right?
Yeah,
so
because they look around and they question
it
all.
In better words,
things are wrong.
He put it in better words than what I've been noticing. When you make friends and people don't behave like anybody else, that there's a real standard feet on the ground normal person, and that's somebody that's been here the whole time. And there are people that have been something else in their past life, recently, and they're trying to cope with being a human now. And you can kind of see it. You can kind of smell it on people. So he put it in a really good way. So that's great to hear it from other sources.
Well, I can attest to that, because when I lose a loved one, it's absolutely it's horrible, because it's not something you're used to going through. When you're here, when you lose somebody here, it feels like it's permanent. I'm sorry, Rob.
Yeah, and it makes you think, like, what is this? No, it just makes you think, like, what, this world's so twisted sometimes. You know what I mean? It's crazy. Like, whoever designed this world, it's insanity. It's like there's some good stuff. There's some really good stuff, but it's like it's just like the common thing when they say when a baby's born, it's beautiful. When someone dies, it's tragic. And like, how do you find out? Like, how do you reconcile with that in life? Or how do you reconcile? We eat animals, bro. You know what I mean? Like, that's everything in this world predates on something else. All animals predate on something else. I don't feel right about that. It's fucked up, but I mean, it's real. It's our reality. I mean, it's strange, right? If you really start to think about it.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't want to live forever. So,
well, you're going to have to. There is no way you
can. I mean, in one go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In this go, like, I wouldn't want to stay. Like, I look forward to getting a reboot.
When you hit your 40s, you're definitely looking forward to a reboot. I can tell you that.
The human experience is a little bit interesting because of the amnesia process. You do have the ability to meet everybody all over again. I mean, eternity is a very long time. So the idea of you not knowing people that you're running into on the planet is impossible. So, but it is fun. You actually, like Tony and I are now talking. We've seen each other on Zoom a bunch of times, and including this time. And he's spoken to Aziz, my son, as if it's the first time. But like, it's not the first time. It's impossible. Eternity. Do you understand what eternity is?
Right.
Eternity is eternity. It doesn't start and it doesn't end. That means we must have actually interacted. He could have been part of the Black League, the resistance movement. We could have been, best friends on the front lines, fighting the whatever. But you come here and it's like, you don't remember, and it's like you get to meet each other all over again. So there's sort of a fun aspect to it, but ultimately it's important to bring your memories back, to get your memories back. And it's not just the memories of the 20 and back, but all the memories, and because that makes you who you are. Look at it this way from Tony's perspective. I'm sorry to read into you, Tony, but look at the drive that Tony has to recover his. Where do you think that came from?
It comes from his higher self.
Yeah, well, it came from, there's nothing well, the higher, there's nothing but experience. Eternity is eternity, and it means experience. That means whatever Tony was, whoever he was beforehand, had a huge amount of experience, and it's that huge amount of experience that is him, that is now driving himself to remember everything. You have to say, when someone's really driven to something, you have to say, what is that person? So, some people have a personality that they just must do something. You have to say, well, it can't be something that just was manufactured in this lifetime. So who was Tony before? He must have been a real somebody in the old days, wherever he came from, to have this type of motivation, this drive to face all this stuff. When you read the Cavalier
Serious
book,
Colony Cavalier.
yeah, Serious Cavalier book, when you read that book, it's brutal when you read all of his experiences. And he didn't flinch from all of those experiences. He wrote all of those sexual abuse, all of the stuff. How do you get to be so brave to do that? It's not like you just woke up yesterday and just did it. He had to have had an enormous amount of brave experiences. He must have been a huge dude in the old days, wherever he came from, to have that level of personality, to be able to force
that's
that on.
exactly what Yemi sensed, but I'd sorry to
Wow.
interrupt, but I had to throw that in.
Yeah, no, that's exactly. She picks up on all this stuff. So, Tony's an interesting guy, but not just because he's interesting now. He was interesting before he was Tony, and this is who he is now.
That's why I think when he had that interaction at school, I think that the hybrid saw that in him, and they were going to use him for these programs, because that's what they do with us. They either get us coming in by our soul's frequency, our ISB frequency, our energetic footprint or fingerprint, or we come in here cloaked and with some protection, and I think he's part of that. You're part of that, Dr. Brown. So is everybody else that has a stake in this. They're actually doing something and feel the need to follow through on something. And for a lot of us, there's a hierarchy kind of engineering our experience here. So there's more to everything that really meets the eye. I think that's the main, if there's one thing, to take away from this, I would say that there is hope, and this is proof of it. And I want to thank you for being an agent of change, Tony, and same with you, Dr. Brown. You have done, and
being good to me today. Thank you.
You have unleashed something that is exponentially, making a change in the world. So thank you very much for that.
I agree. Well, I guess we could finish it from here. Does everybody want to tell where you could find your books and find your websites and all that stuff? And if you want to start with Nate, then Tony, then Courtney, and thank you guys all for doing this. This was amazing. This was a really good show.
Yeah, you can find me at the Hajayan Contact E channel. The spelling's up on the screen. That's here on YouTube. Voices of Orion Project on Rumble. I don't have a website, even though we're using a website name. But other than that, that's pretty much it, other than the Planetary Consciousness Project on Telegram, as well as, Rob's groups as well. I'm active in his groups too. I'm done. Go ahead.
I'll go. It's right there on my name tag, TonyRodrigues.com. It's links to all the books and everything I'm working on. My Patreon, I do groups, 3-4 groups a week, and it's been going really good. So TonyRodrigues.com, you can reach me and contact me with any questions or anything. But I just want to say thanks, you guys. I expected to come here and kind of talk a little bit. I didn't expect all this, so I really feel like it's like it's my birthday or something. So thanks, and Dr. Courtney Brown, I'm a big fan. So to hear these things from you really means a lot for me. Thank you.
Well, I can say that if people haven't read Tony's book, the first one is a big one. Tony, what's the name of that again? It's Cavalier.
Series Colony Cavalier.
Yeah, Series Colony Cavalier. I went through it slow, like about 5 pages a day, because I couldn't take it more than 5 pages a day because it was so intense. It is a really great book. And so if you really, it's not just learning Tony's experience, but we have actually checked a bunch of stuff in that book. It really happens. And so if you haven't actually read that book, it's really worth it. Is it available in Kindle?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So it's available. I have the hard copy book, but I'm going to start using old Kindle stuff now. And so that's really, it's really, if you can get that book, it's really a good read. And it's from our perspective, it's as real as it gets. I mean, so it's not like just his imagination. So anyway, I strongly recommend it. In terms of my stuff, we do remote viewing, but we also do physical recording. We have figured out how to evade the ET tech, physical recording of extraterrestrial ships, UFOs, UAPs. And there's two websites for us, which is the nonprofit's website, farsight.org, FARSIGHT.org. And there you can see a little sort of a menu of everything we do, including printed instructions on what we do to physically record the UFOs. And then we have our streaming service, which is the place where we have everything. And that's farsightprime.com, FARSIGHT, then prime, all one word, .com. And that's technically equivalent to Hulu, Netflix, Disney, whatever. The reason that was important, actually, it wouldn't have happened if my son Aziz didn't push me to do this. The reason that's important is because the culture today is one of cancel culture, blocking people. With YouTube, I love YouTube. We're YouTube partners, but you never know what's going to happen with your videos or what's going to happen with your channel from time to time. And so, we had to have control over the mic. We had to have control over the videos where we could tell everything. And a lot of the stuff that we write about, that we investigate, you simply can't put on YouTube. So, like, for example, when we do anything with dealing with reptilians, you get an announcement under the video that reptilians are imaginary. It's something coming from Wikipedia and stuff. Every time you mention it, so we had to have. YouTube is a great thing, but it's a do-it-yourself streaming service. We had to have our equivalent of Disney, Paramount Plus, HBO Max, type of stuff. So we have that. It's run by Vimeo. It's a really well-developed channel. And so farsightprime.com is where we have all of our content, and the content is huge. And it's content that we can't put anyplace else. And so that's where people can actually see the deep. And so, yeah. So anyway, but farsight.org. And we also have a YouTube channel called Farsight, where we have some series come out just with the political stuff, like deep news, going into the heads of political leaders and stuff like that. That's sort of fun to follow because you can see remote viewing in practice, fully operational. So, and all of our stuff is done totally blind, no front loading, no nothing, by super trained people. So when Yeme, formerly Princess, went into the head of Tony Rodrigues, she wasn't told anything. She knew nothing. It could have been the head of Disney as far as she was concerned. She would have known. But she described him exactly the way he would describe himself in the book, almost word for word. It was freaky for me because I knew the book and I had that page open when I was listening to her on video saying that stuff, and I said, "Holy blankety blank!" And so. Nathan, you can see I try to avoid those words, just I don't want to be censored. So anyway, so yeah, that's where we get my stuff. Also, if you want to see pictures of UFOs, you can go to my Instagram site. I'm using that as sort of a fun thing to do. That's Instagram at Courtney Brown Farsight, all one word. Courtney Brown Farsight, all one word. And then we have a lot of YouTube. We have a lot of videos up there on Instagram that you can show your friends and your phones. Now, if you see like cylindrical, thin, the cylindrical cigar-shaped UFOs, those are reptilian craft. So those are reptilian craft. They also have a similar shape to the types of craft that Tony used to fly in. He used to be in a cylindrical type of metal craft. That's the type when we have videos of those things, like right over our heads. So if you want to see some of that kind of stuff, plus the orbs and everything else, they're there too. Courtney Brown Farsight on Instagram. And that part is free and very convenient because you always have your phone. I'll shut up now. My bad.
And I can vouch for that. I
No,
have it on my
that's great.
phone, so it's a library of knowledge that's indispensable and is necessary to navigate this disclosure maze that we're going through. It's a measuring stick to reality. So that's the way I like to to think about it. So I highly recommend it.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I thought this was really great, Dr. Brown and Tony and Nate. This was amazing. And just for my stuff, guys, check out the Patreon. Support the podcast if you can. Patreon might be the best way to do that because it's cheap. And also, come on my Discord chat and my Telegram chat. People seem to like it. And and I just want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. And that should be it. If it's not letting me.